Welcome to the Human Evolution Podcast, where we dive deep into the science, philosophies, and strategies that create real and lasting change. I'm Goldstein, and here we leave traditional self-help behind and map the real terrain of true personal development.
So for those that have seen previous shows, I went on the same 12-day silent meditation retreat that Ori has been on. I went to a different facility here in Michigan. You went to the one in Georgia. The one I went to is kind of it's dynamic because it's the same association, the same Vipassana association. So same teaching, same curriculum, all that's the same organization. They just do things a little bit differently up here because they don't have a dedicated space. They get people to sign up and donate, and then they choose a facility, then they use that facility. This was in a monastery in a place called Chelsea, Michigan, which is right outside of Ann Arbor. Most people have heard of that before, about an hour and a half from Detroit, where I'm at now. So, smaller facility, but again, everything else was identical. It was, one day of orientation when I got there, then the 10 days of meditation, like we spoke about in your episode, and then the kind of the last day to kind of just decompress, clean up, and because it's a volunteer, it's entirely free. So the students that are there cooking the food and cleaning and helping out are older students, they call them. The previous students, they came back to volunteer their time. So of course on the last day we all pitched in and cleaned up. So it's a communal setting. And the reason I say all this, to preface all that, is that we're going to get into like the dynamics of it and like the day to day. I'm going to describe the things that I got out of it that were positive. I'll describe a couple of things that were a little like annoying to me, not to bash the association or anything like that, because it was awesome, it's wonderful, and they do this for free. But I just want people to know, who are curious. I want people to get the truth, the real story. I don't want to come on here and say, oh, it was wonderful, everybody should do it. I want people who are curious about it to say, okay, like these 9 things were awesome, but if you go, just be aware that this other part, you might have to prepare for that. I'll just get the logistics of it first. I overpacked, like you kind of said, make sure you take as much as you want to be comfortable. There's no limitation on what you can show up with. I showed up with 2 huge rolling duffel bags, extra pillows and everything else like that. I wanted all the comforts. There are not washers and dryers. Now, to be honest, you're mostly sedentary the entire time. So there's not a lot of like sweating or getting dirty, but like most people, hopefully most people, it is nice to shower once a day and put on clean clothes. Because I travel so much, I actually have like 20 pairs of clothes. I can go that long without wash because when I go overseas, I have a lot of shirts. I got these, again, not a sponsor, but I got these Viore shirts here. As they do sponsor Tim Ferriss, that's where I heard about him. But I got like 20 of these fucking things. I find the size that I like and I order 20 of them. A few days in, if you wanted to wash your clothes, you had to do it in the sink and hang it outside, just an annoyance. So I showed up with a lot of things, which if anybody's considering doing one of these, keep that in mind. Go to Target and buy a pack of t-shirts if you need to. So there's that. And it all just comes down to comfort. Could one go the entire time on 5 shirts and shorts and socks and everything? Of course. But if you want to be comfortable and feel clean. Anyway, day 1, we arrive, and there's a little registration, just like anything else. Again, this is all volunteers. It's a nonprofit organization, so they're run off of donations and from former students who have been before that show up to help. And those students that show up to help also participate in the meditation. So they get the benefit of the meditations in the course again, but they're also there to assist. So day 1, simple orientation. You show up, you get to kind of meet everybody and talk a little bit. For at least at mine, we spoke in our group of 16. It was all males at this one, depending upon the size of the facility. They can't be co-ed, and they didn't have enough room, so it was all males, about 16 of us. I know yours was considerably larger. Do you know how many people were at the one?
Ours was about 70, I'd say. It was roughly about 30 males, 30 females, okay. And then plus minus whatever.
That's significantly larger. And it was good to be smaller, I think, and smaller group, little meditation hall and everything else. And again, based on facility and the rules. So showed up, we talked a little bit amongst our group. I got to meet my roommate, and which is another thing. One of the things that I would put on, not the negative column, but just on the side of things that, for those that are not used to communal settings, I was in the Marines and I've lived with roommates and been around people a lot and traveled and been in tight situations with other people. So I don't mind the communal setting. I don't mind having roommates. Facility was very, very nice. It was very organized, very clean.
Let me actually ask you about that, because that is something. Like, so you had a roommate, but like, how do you deal with a roommate when you're silent for 10 days? Like, I mean, this had to be the weirdest, most awkward situation. What was that like?
It was a little strange because I got there first, so I claimed the bed that was on the inside, furthest from the door. So every time I would have to walk by him and just like, do I not look at him? Like, do we not even make a nod? Do it? Because you're not supposed to do that. They tell you to not only not communicate, but don't make any gestures, don't make eye contact. They say now, inevitably, you're going to
Of
run into
course.
somebody in the hallway or hold a door for somebody. There's going to be a little bit of a nod. You don't have to take it to the extreme, although some people did when I was there. So it was a little awkward at times, especially because he got sick. And one of the other things leading into the communal setting that I, just fair warning for anybody that goes to any type of group activity like this. There were a couple guys that showed up that weren't feeling well from day one. I could tell because they were coughing and sneezing. There wasn't a lot of room to separate them out. I mean, you could do a little bit. You can kind of keep them not quarantined, but just keep them off to the side. So that spread a little bit because in the meditation hall, I think for the first few days, these people were just kind of coughing and sneezing out into the area. Now we're separated on our mats. We had assigned mats. Everybody gets a little assigned mat where they're at. So,
and how much space did you actually have for your mats? Like, I mean, given the fact that was only like just a couple of dozen people or so, like, I mean, did you have a good amount of space between each person, or were you still packed in pretty tight?
It was a large hall. It was in a monastery, and it was a fairly large meditation hall. So I could maybe 5 feet between us. I mean, close enough to get hit with sneeze, but not like far away. Because I'm sure we've all seen those videos where somebody sneezes and they do the slow motion camera and they show that huge cloud that comes out. So anyway, when I got there the first day, I noticed a couple of the guys weren't feeling well, and I'm like, okay, well, here we go. So I was very deliberate about the hand sanitizers and washing my hands and trying not to touch my face whenever I was thinking about it. So my roommate ended up getting sick. So to add to the awkwardness of having to kind of pass by each other, and then like I had my window blinds, my shades open all the time. I like natural light. And the schedule is such that it's 4 a.m. We're supposed to be up and start meditating. And then at 10 p.m., it's lights out, basically at sundown this time of year. One of the awkward instances, for example, is I kept my blinds open all the time and he kept his shut. Well, it's a small room. So I'm like, should I go up there and like mime? Do you want me to shut these kind of thing? Like little things like that. So, but yeah, he ended up getting sick, and it's close quarters. And again, I don't have a problem with like staying in rooms with people or anything like that. I didn't know the guy, but we spoke for 10 minutes before we had to go into what they call noble silence, which is what you keep for the duration of the course, where you don't speak or make eye contact. They tell you to pretend that you're here by yourself, in so much as that's possible. So you try to keep that mindset, try to ignore everybody else. So it was a little strange and awkward. If I do this again, I'll prefer to go to a location that I have my own room at night, because he did get sick and was coughing significantly. None of this was his fault, by the way, because somebody else had gotten him sick. So I didn't harbor any anger, even though I was kind of annoyed because he did talk in his sleep a little bit as well. So I'm not saying I didn't get mad.
And we'll get into that separately, but I am curious to see, like, I mean, how you dealt with emotions that showed up for you, like just resentment for people bringing in disease into your meditation retreat or something.
Yes. That's a really good question, because the only thing I was upset about for probably that entire time, the course managers, it was no surprise that a couple of these guys were sick coming in. Just obviously, as a course manager, if I was in charge of that place, would I turn them away at the door? I don't think I would do that. I would probably have taken some measures, made them wear masks.
That's an interesting question. Why would you not turn them away? Obviously, like, I mean, this brought up your resentments, etc. But like, I mean, given the fact you're trying to create a meditation retreat, you should definitely say, like, look, if you're feeling sick, I'm sorry, we'll sign you up for the next one, whatever it is. It just doesn't seem fair on some level.
Yeah. Well, and now that you break it down like that, I actually kind of leaning that way now, because there was a waiting list. This is such a popular course. This is, again, oh, there we go. Just like that. They were doing that the whole time. But this is such a popular course, and it's, it's free of charge, and the teacher's wonderful. We'll get into all that. So there was a waiting list. So when a couple of these guys showed up and they weren't feeling well, I was like, oh, at least put a mask on them, or keep them away from the food, make them eat last, kind of thing. I'm not talking about being cruel. I'm just like, just do what's good for the group. Now, if anybody's familiar with Vipassana, which I was a little bit beforehand, because I have Sam Harris's app, and I knew a little bit of the theory and everything behind it. No, expert by no means, but I had some foundational knowledge. You should be able to meditate and, drop in and find your own space. Doesn't matter what's going on outside around you. So it shouldn't matter that people are coughing and there's noise going on, but it is a little unsettling when you're sitting there and you're kind of getting into the zone and somebody's like, it coughs super loud. I'm not going to say that took away from the experience. Most of my headache or most of my resentment or anger was built at night because I couldn't sleep because, like I said, the poor guy, he was sick and coughing, and then he would start talking every 30 seconds. It reminded me what the CIA used to, what do they call it? Enhanced interrogation, torture. They would
Keep a
to keep
person
people.
awake.
Yeah, they wait till you start dozing off, and then they splash water on you. So it felt like that. Obviously, I'm being facetious, but it felt like I started dozing off, and he would start yelling something. So there was that. And again, I was more probably concerned or upset with the way that it was handled. At that point, it was a little too late because the sickness had spread around. They probably should have turned some people away at the door, or at least kept their mats separate from us in the meditation hall. Now, for anybody who's not familiar with it, it's put on by S.N. Goenka, I believe. He passed away a few years back, I think, maybe 10 years ago now.
2016, I think, right?
Okay, so it's been a while, yeah. I should have looked this up. Well, I'll link everything in the notes so everybody can check it out. So, wonderful teacher. So, what you do is you listen to his previous recordings during the day by speakers. And then in the evening, they have something what's called discourse, where he actually gets into the philosophy and the theory behind it. And they show a video recording they're great. I mean, it's wonderful. So, that's like the arrival, getting there, a couple frustrations I had, just not turning away the sick people or keeping them separate, the communal living. And look, they have facilities and they do this in every state. You can find the one closest to you. Just be mindful that if you like your own space and you really want to go to one of these, just check out the rules and see what facility it's going to be at to make sure, because you don't want your experience to be overshadowed by something like that, where you get there and you have a roommate or somebody gets sick or anything like that. And that's just the reality of it.
So, I mean, I've got so many questions right now.
Sure, yeah.
So, like, the thing that comes up for me is that you, as a just part of your nature at this point in time, and I believe it, whether it be nature or nurture, would be a different discussion. But like, I mean, like, you're so quick to forgive people for so many different things. And here you have your roommate that's just like, I mean, coughing, talking in his sleep. People showed up to the retreat sick. The course manager should have kicked them out, whatever it was. Were you giving them kind of passes for everything? Or were you, like, in your meditation dealing with these emotions that came up for you and becoming more aware of them? I mean, we haven't gotten into the meditation itself yet, but I'm very curious to know, like, did these things show up in your meditation as something to deal with? Or were you just still in your head going like, it's okay, I'll let it pass?
I did get frustrated at a couple of things that seem silly now. One of them was obviously the sickness, and sometimes we're sitting in the hall, we're trying to meditate, of course. There's a difference between meditating somewhere, like let's say I'm in a home right now and I've got a water pump, which is true. I've got a sump pump over here. It rained last night in Detroit. It's in the background, but it's a steady noise. Now, somebody violently coughing isn't a pleasant background sound. So again, maybe a more advanced meditator could whatever, but it did start like jolting a little
gnawing
bit.
away at you.
That did a little bit, and surprisingly enough, other little things, because and this is just me being me, but I had enough clothes and I showered every day. There were some guys when we first got there, they were like, yeah, you really don't even need to shower that much. I'm like, well, maybe you do. But the showers are all remodeled. I'm like, why wouldn't you? We have so much time in the day. I would shower 5 times just for something to do. And again, this is just me nitpicking, and this is kind of off topic, but these are my observations because I was always a very curious child, right? People watching is inherent for humans. So to say that somebody's curious and they like people watching, I think we all like people watching. But I was always a very curious child. I was always observing things. Then, of course, I went in the military. Then I was a government investigator. So I was actually on surveillance and investigating things in the government. Like, that was my job, was to follow people around and document everything they did. And then after that job, I was a private investigator, and that was even turned up even more, where I literally would follow somebody for a year. I would know everything about them, and they'd never seen me. So humans are, by nature, curious about other people. But my brain has always been cranked up to 10. So when people show up, I'm like, okay, that guy got out of that car with those license plates. I tried to shut this off. And it's one of the things that took me a few days to do, was I need to stop worrying about everybody else. Because I would literally, like, they would call somebody's name up to talk to the teacher. And I'm like, well, that's not the name they gave me when they introduced themselves to me on day one. So this guy's obviously using his nickname. So along with that, I was noticing things that I was letting myself get irritated. Everybody showed up in decent automobiles, which I know is not a gauge for your means, because some people live outside their means and they have nicer cars than they can afford. But I'm like, 3 days in, some of these grown men were washing their clothes. I was like, you don't have 5 shirts? You can't at least wait 5 days? So those are the things that I was messing with myself in my own mind. I'm like, seriously? So I did have that going on, where I was being a little judgmental, and then, of course, all the coughing and sickness.
Yeah. So as a quick thing for our viewers, just so they understand what's going on here. So the difference between Vipassana meditation and normal meditation is, normal meditation, your brain kind of goes crazy, and you just kind of like tell the monkey to shut up and you like move on. Whereas with Vipassana meditation, the thing that makes it a bit different is you kind of follow through and you pay attention to what sensations you have in your body. And you kind of like notice, what is this bringing up inside of me? And instead of actually going down that, you observe it, you observe it as just like almost as if you're a doctor saying, oh, I get it. So I've got a sensation here in my neck and it's tight and it feels a bit cold and it's this size, et cetera, et cetera. So the reason why I'm asking Lee these questions is because I'm really curious to know, like, I mean, as he started feeling, like, for example, this judgmental feeling,
Yeah.
did it bring up memories? Did it bring up certain things? I'm just very curious to know, like, I mean, like, if you follow down that path to see the beginning of things, how things happen for you, or if you just kind of like just were like, oh, my brain's being judgmental, let's stop it. I want to know, like, I mean, 10 days of this, I'm very curious to know where your brain took it.
It came in waves. So like there were some days where like the coughing and like other things, like little minor things, minor annoyances, I was like, hey, just let it go. It's okay. And I think it was just maybe based on my mood that day, or like if I was tired or not, because there were days that shit got to me, and then days where I just didn't pay attention to it at all. Everything you just said about, you know, the meditations and the way we're supposed to observe the sensations as things as they are, not as we'd want them to be. But still, as a human being, and I started getting annoyed. I probably separated those two things. Now that I look back on it, I was like, I'm here to meditate. I'm doing this over here, but these guys need to stop fucking coughing over here. So I probably didn't lean into to practice based on those things. I was more thinking big picture, I'm over here kind of thing. So there was a disconnection there on that part. And again, you know,
nothing wrong with that. It's just, I mean, where your brain took you, right? I was really curious to see where it did take you.
I may sound like I'm being, you know, pretentious or whatever. Like, this guy's got a lot of clothes. He showers every day, you know, all those other things. But again, for anybody who's thinking about doing one of these things, I want them to know the reality of it is that you're going to have people show up in a communal setting. We can all do and act the way we want in the privacy of our homes and back where we're from. Some people just can't read the room when they come into like a communal setting, and just be aware. Now, I'm saying all these things now, and I really want to make clear that
you're saying that certain
awesome.
people had like body odor issues or stuff like that? Did that show up? Like, how bad did it get?
No, it wasn't that bad, and quite honestly, we didn't get close enough to pick up on any of that. And I'm also a clean freak, so you're getting this perspective from somebody who's a little over the top with that stuff. So now, I've been dirty before. I was, you know, in the field of the Marine Corps for 90 days at a time, not showering or brushing my teeth. So I've been disgusting before. It's not like I haven't been dirty. Aside from that, the positives about the logistical part of it were the food was excellent. Vegetarian, I don't believe there's no meat or anything like that, but it was amazing food. They serve breakfast and lunch, and then there's tea in the afternoon. I don't want to use the term sedentary, but because you're meditating most of the day, you can do a little bit of walking, which I'll get into in a second, but you're not moving that much. So they don't feed you a lot or often, but you're not hungry because you're just not expending a lot of physical energy. Your brain may be working, but so the food was amazing. I can't express how wonderful the course and the teachings were. I mean, that was absolutely amazing. There are long days. There's long days. Like I said, they bang the first gong at 4 a.m. You're supposed to meditate either in your room or go to the meditation hall. I did take your advice. I went into the meditation hall. I only stayed for like an hour, so to kind of drive toward the actual physics stuff. I get questioned before I went, and then asked after I got out, like, how are you going to deal with that many days of silence and not have your phone and be bored? None of that happened. I did not miss my phone. I did not miss talking to anybody. I didn't know these people anyway, so that wasn't that big of a deal. My only thing that came up for me physically is sitting cross-legged on the floor on a meditation pillow was so painful because I'm not very flexible, which is my own fault because I just don't stretch enough. And so when people ask me like, oh my God, like, actually, no, the only thing that was hard for me that I had to fight through was my just sitting and being in pain. Now, that said, they had extra cushions there. I set up like a little fort around me. I had like pillows under my knees and everything. They do give you a chair if you're uncomfortable. So, you know, anybody who's thinking about doing it, don't think that you're going to have to sit on cement floors. I mean, they try to make you as comfortable as possible. Now, some of it on the flip side of that, I let my discomfort stay. I made sure I made myself sit down, because I'm like, I was like, I can't believe I'm so stupid that I haven't stretched. Like, I deserve this. Like, I deserve to be in pain because I'm a grown man. I can't sit cross-legged. So I'm like, I'm going to
Interesting.
sit
That
here.
came up for you that way. Okay.
Yeah, I was annoyed. I was annoyed with
Why
myself.
don't I just punish myself some? Like while
Yeah,
I'm already doing 10 days of some level
that,
of punishment. Why don't I just go further?
yeah, that's what I did. Well, so there's a couple things. I'm like, well, by the time I leave here, I should be able to sit here because this is going to hurt so much the entire time. So I did. And interestingly enough, that was my right knee that was already hurting on the inside from running. And then the sitting for meditation all day, it started hurting on the other side. I'm like, oh, fucking great. The whole knee hurts now. So I'll tell my knee story real quick. I'm sitting there day after day. My knee's killing me. Now they don't make you sit still. They tell you you should, but nobody's forcing you to do anything. So this is a course, and there's a teacher there, but it's not like a super strict thing. If you have to get up and run to the bathroom, nobody's going to yell at you. You know, it's not like that whatsoever. It's a very compassionate setting. If you have to stretch your legs out, which I did often, they say try not to do that, but they don't stop you from doing any of that. I just wanted to fight through it to prove to myself that I could do it. So my knee was in significant pain, and I sat through it for a few days. I had a very strange experience about 4 days in. We were kind of deep into meditation at that point. Obviously, it had been several days, middle of the day. My knee was throbbing it so much. And I think this was the first day of Vipassana because the first few days they kind of, as a beginner's course, they start you from just observing the breath. So you can come in there with zero knowledge of how any of this works, and they kind of start you with the basics, the foundation. So by day 4, we get into the actual technique. And I'm sitting there in pain, and in my mind, I'm just going to see if I can try to work through this pain to detach from the pain in my knee and see if I can sit here with it without stretching my legs. You don't literally meditate from 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. You do it in small parts during the day, and then you get breaks. So when I say we sat for a long time, it was usually no more than an hour at a time, which is a long time in silence. And, if there's not much going on, it's a long time to sit. But you're not sitting there for 4 hours. Like, you sit for an hour, you can get up and stretch, walk around, go to the bathroom, and come back. So at one of the afternoon meditations, my knee was throbbing, and I was trying to detach myself. And I've done this before with my mind, or I've removed myself from the pain. Doesn't work all the time, usually small sections. But because I was so in depth and so into my own head at that point, I pictured a stereo knob, like we've all had stereos in our cars and everything else, but like a big stereo knob in my head. And in my mind, I turned the knob down, like turning the volume down. And the pain in my knee corresponded with that. It went down to zero, completely to zero. And then in my mind, I pictured turning the knob up, and then the pain increased with what I was seeing in my mind turning that knob. So the first time that happened, I was like, there's no way. Like, this is all in my head, which it is all in my head. But I was like, yeah, I'm imagining this. So I did that like 8 or 9 times and had the same effect every time. Like, I would turn it down, the pain would go down. And I was like, holy shit, this is remarkable. This is literally like all the things we've spoken about before, about just different pains and like the mind-body connection. But this is like, I'm seeing it, and my conscious mind is not believing it as I'm doing it. But here I am doing it, and it's working. So I did it so many times that I'm like, all right, well, I got bored doing that. So I just turned it down. I was like, oh, I'm done. So I kept going along with the meditation. But I thought that was like on day 4. And like I say, that was the first, I want to say, like maybe breakthrough where something surprising happened to me. But the first few days, you're just kind of watching the breath and sitting there. But that was like the first, like, holy shit, like something's really happening here.
I'll say that is really, really huge. I mean, this was you actually getting in contact with your subconscious mind on a very deep, profound level. I mean, I don't want you to in any way minimize that. It's like you actually learned the fact that your brain was in control of the pain sensation.
Yeah.
And I want you to carry that with you beyond that course in a very big way.
Yeah. And the good news is my knee doesn't hurt now. I ran today for the first time in probably 8 months, like a real run. Now I attribute some of that to just being in the retreat. So to get on the topic of exercise while you're there, you're not really supposed to exercise or have any other release. The idea is that you sit with your attention and your thoughts and everything. They don't want you to, for example, I could have easily gotten stressed out about something and done like 100 push-ups or maybe 30. I don't know. But I've done a bunch of push-ups to kind of release all that, but they don't want any of that either. Now, they did have a field, and I don't know what the situation was at your place, but they had this about half the size of an American football field, or a pitch for all you soccer fans. It was flagged off, a little walking path, and you could go out and make as many laps as you want. So, of course, I counted 350 steps around the walking path. And I got in quite a few steps, which is why I'm still tan, by the way. I was out in the sun every day. But it's funny, you can go out of this field. They have it flagged off. You can do the walking path. It's just a flat field, or you can sit in the middle of the field or whatever. So we're all out there between meditation sessions and everything else, and it's like everybody's trying to avoid each other. So we're all looking down. If anybody driving by probably would have been like, well, I don't know what's going on over there. There's obviously some kind of a sane asylum or something like that. There's these guys just stumbling around the yard like those little like Roomba vacuums just bouncing off each other and trying to stay away from each other. So I did quite a few steps every day, like at a decent clip, and I was able to get some exercise in, but it was on grass. So yes, I was walking on my knee, but it probably wasn't doing any further damage. It was already done. And I also attribute it not hurting today to being stretched so much during the sittings. You had an outside area, but I don't remember, did they have like a walking path, or were you more confined?
No, it was actually really nice. Our one actually had some woods that with a walking path through the woods, and then an open field that was, again, probably about the same thing, like about half the size of an American football field.
Sure.
But we had a good few paths. So it was probably like if yours was 350 steps around, ours was probably about, I don't know, maybe about 1,500 steps to go through the whole thing. So it was a nice size.
And nobody stopped me from going out there because at the end, everybody was like, hey, man, you walked a lot. I'm like, nothing else to do, so but yeah, I was cognizant of it though, because I didn't want to turn it into exercise. I know that sounds kind of stupid because walking is exercise, but I wanted to keep like a pace where I could still kind of like be mindful while I was walking and not turn it into like something where I felt like I was jogging and sweating and everything else. So I try to keep so the first gong goes off at 4 a.m. You meditate for a couple of hours at your own pace, either in your room or in the meditation hall. I did go to the hall for about an hour till my knee really started bothering me. Then I would go back to my room, and then the group meditation would start at, I believe, 6:30. It's a couple hours in.
I think it was for me, right? Or
yeah,
was it 6 or 6:30? Either way.
It's the same schedule. I should know this. I should be like ingrained in my brain by now. And then there's a breakfast. But there are several group meditations during the day. I want to be clear that when I say from 4 a.m. to 10 p.m., you're not in that hall the whole time. There are, I believe, three main group meditations followed by instruction that you have to be in the hall together. If, like me, the first few days my knee was in so much pain, some of the meditation time in the afternoon that you're allowed to meditate on your own, I would do that in the chair in my room, or a chair outside, or wherever I wanted to sit. So I just want to make it clear that this isn't like some super strict thing, but you do have to be in the hall for those 3 hours a day, and they're beneficial. You meditate with the group. There's obviously the instruction that's put on the speaker, the recording from Goenka, the person who put this all together that's since passed, and that was very helpful. So the day kind of plays out like that. It's very structured. You get the morning gong, you meditate, you get breakfast, then you have some time. You have time to bathe, wash your clothes in the sink if you have to. So these are all like separate blocks of time: meditation time, group meditation time, free time. There was never any time during the day where I couldn't go do whatever I needed to, like brush your teeth, whatever. There's plenty of facilities for all that. There were no lines for anything. So that was very comfortable. It was a very relaxed. And what that brings me to is just the feeling of not only giving up my phone, which I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about that. I'm probably no better, no worse than anybody else when it comes to my phone. I look at it all day. I have it on me all day. I listen to podcasts when I'm walking or jogging or something like that. I have it with me. It's in my pocket all the time. I try to reply to messages quickly. I'm not glued to it, so there is that extreme. But I'm also not one of those people that'll put it down and walk away from it for 8 hours at a time. I'm still checking it. So when I got there and you turn your phones in after orientation, I didn't really miss it. I found myself doing some compulsory actions because I would have a thought.
What do you mean?
So I keep my phone in my left pocket all the time, or a certain spot next to me when I'm sleeping. And sometimes during the day, I would stand in line for something, like for food. That's like reaching in my pocket for my phone, because that's normally when you're standing in line, no matter where you're at, the grocery store or whatever. It's like, now I'm going to check Instagram. That's why, like, when Andrew Huberman talks about the phone being more of a compulsion than a habit now, it's been getting ingrained in our brains. No matter where I'm at, if I'm standing in line or if I have a second, or on the toilet, whatever, you know what I mean? Like we reach for things because we're just used to doing it. Like, oh, I wonder if and then there's the notifications, everything. People know this shit already, and the phone issue gets beat to death. But so I would find myself reaching for my phone a lot, and it wasn't all like a negative thing in the sense that, I'm reaching for something when I should be mindful. I had a lot of ideas during the week, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not sure how that works. I need to Google that. And my hand would go in my pocket. I'm like, shit, I can't. Or I want to make a note of this. Like I don't necessarily want to be on my phone or be distracted or deal with work, but I want to make a note so I don't have to carry this around in my head all week. So there was that. There was a lot of reaching for my phone. I woke up a couple times in the middle of the night. Sometimes back home here, I'll listen to a podcast at night. May not be the healthiest thing to do, but I'm like, at night it's dark and I'm like reaching over for my phone. I'm like, oh right, it's not there. But honestly, being away from
one thing to tell the viewers again, like it's just like I need you to understand when they say no communication, they mean no even writing down on paper. So like it's
right.
You have no way to take notes in any way, shape, or form. Whatever's in your head has to stay in your head. So I'm sorry.
That's
I just
right.
wanted to
Yeah, no, great point. Great point. You know far in advance of whether you're accepted to go to the course. It's not like you're going to do anything last minute. You get to tell all your friends, family, and business stuff like, hey, I'm going to be gone on this retreat. So most people should be okay getting rid of their phones for that length of time. There's also an emergency number to the facility if a family needs to get a hold of you, of course. I mean, it's not like it's not that bad. But surprisingly enough, though, I did not miss it at all in the sense that when I reached for my phone and it wasn't there, I would just laugh to myself. I wasn't like, I need my phone, So I was a little curious going in how I was going to feel about that because I was one of those guys that had to have like all the fancy stuff. I have to have new phones and shit all the time. So I had a smartphone back in the government when BlackBerries first came out that you could search the web with. Now this is early 2000s. So I've had one for 20 years. And I was just kind of wondering like, how am I going to go throughout the entire day without the phone? And it honestly wasn't that hard to do. I didn't have any issues with it other than wanting to take notes and, again, looking up things on Google or something like that. So I was pleasantly surprised that didn't become more stressful.
And so now I want to hit on like the emotional aspects or realizations or things like that. Like, I mean,
Sure.
Take me through, like, I mean, where did your brain go for the first few days when it's going through its craziness of releasing everything that happened to you before you were in the retreat and getting used to this level of silence? Like, I mean, was there some kind of a getting used to it phase, or did it feel natural to you? How was it for you?
Because I had some foundational knowledge of the technique from Sam's app, I felt like this is a funny story. So, and again, this is me in my own head projecting my thoughts because I'm observing everybody else, right? So I felt like some of the people that were attending were trying too hard or trying to force it. When I kind of knew, we get in the hall, we sit down, I tried to like drop in as fast as I could. I kind of had that baseline. Now, that being said, I want to be clear, this is a beginner's course. So you could never have heard the term Vipassana before and show up. So to your question, the first few days, I was able to kind of just drop in and start focusing and let my brain kind of do its thing. I did have some, obviously, times of boredom in there. My observations of everybody else, though, were very interesting because we would have our little breaks and people would go outside, and we had this one younger guy who would go sit and stare at an anthill. I kind of got the feeling, and again, I know I sound super judgmental right now. I can't fucking help it. It's just me. It's funny to me. Like, these things are entertaining to me. I'm like, gosh, I think these guys are trying too hard. Some of them are trying too hard. I'm like, the technique is not to force it. It's to just observe, Like the day two, somebody would wander outside and was walking around sniffing all the flower pots and everything. And I'm like, maybe that's their thing. Maybe they do that at home. Hopefully they get it by the end of it. So anyway,
I'm here to meditate, damn it.
yeah. I was like, just like maybe they watched a movie or they read something where if you stare at a plant long enough, it'll start talking to you. I mean, maybe with mushrooms, but so I kind of was looking around and I'm like, it'd be interesting to see other people's expectations were going into it. I just assumed I'm just going to sit there and let my mind wander. Other people were probably thinking like, okay, I have to be able to communicate with these birds by the time I'm out of here or something like that. So that's what it felt like to me, just watching people. And again, it was to my detriment because my brain wouldn't stop observing and cataloging people. Like by day two, I knew everybody's habits, who was going to the bathroom when, and who had showered and who hadn't showered, and who didn't bring enough clothes and everything else. So that kind of kept me occupied. So sitting in the actual meditation itself and trying to focus, I caught myself thinking ahead too much because not only are you there and it's There's no caffeine. I mean, I think they had tea that if you wanted it, they had English breakfast, but I avoided it. So there's no caffeine, no meat, no protein. I mean, there's plant protein, whatever. So it was a detox away from the phone, all this other stuff. Well, to add to that, and I didn't realize this at the time, it was kind of a dopamine detox because you're there and you're comfortable. You don't have to make any decisions. All your decisions are made for you. They feed you. You know, if you're like, oh shit, I didn't take care of something business wise or in my life, it doesn't matter. You can't do anything about it. So that was very comforting. Obviously, my knee was bothering me, whatever. That's a physical thing. But I started recognizing a few days in that it was definitely like a dopamine detox because what was happening is I would get bored in the meditation as one does because, like I would sit there for hours
You're
on
just
end.
sitting.
And I would start looking forward to trips I have coming up, and then I would start like daydreaming about, oh, it's going to be so much fun to be back in Florida or something like that. Now I realize that you're not supposed to do that, but I had to keep pulling my brain back. So that was difficult. And again, they tell you like, don't get mad at yourself for that. Just like, okay, refocus on the breath. So that happened a lot where the day started to drag out a little bit and I've caught myself looking forward to things. But for the dopamine side of things, like whenever I needed like a pick me up, I would think ahead. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so much fun to get out of here and go do this. So that probably wasn't, something I should have been doing, but I didn't fight it either. Getting into days 5 and 6, I all of a sudden just an outrageous amount of new ideas, not all huge, just the optimizations to make in business and in life. A bunch of questions that had been pending in my mind that I wasn't really quite sure what to do with. And I had not been thinking about these things up until that point. It's just one morning I woke up and I was like, I know exactly what I need to do when I get back, which I found very interesting because I know a lot of people, they try to disconnect for a few hours. They'll put their phone down and go for a long walk and they'll do some thinking. And that's very beneficial. I was very surprised that it took 5 days of not having the phone and being in an extreme circumstance to start having some clarity. So I don't know if it's brain damage on my part or if people need to take that and think about it because maybe it'd be beneficial to disconnect for a longer period of time. I know Tim Ferriss does it. He goes up in the mountains. So I thought that was very interesting. I don't know if you had an experience like that as well, but
I'll definitely speak to that. It's like, I mean, to me, it's just, I think that the idea of disconnecting for half an hour is definitely better than not disconnecting at all. But you've got to get to a point that the brain basically has like its reset moment. There was a book I read maybe just a few months ago called The 12-Hour Walk, where a guy spoke about the fact that like he was just going through hell in his life. And so he got used to walking. And one day he just like left the house, said, I'll be back whenever. And his wife was like, please go. And he walked for 12 hours. And after the 12 hours, he finally got that switch that like turned off in his head. And he finally got that clarity that he was looking for. So, and for me, it was, I think I probably got there about day 3 or 4. Also, like it took a good while for my brain to finally shut up that I was able to get like the new thoughts as opposed to all the old thoughts. I just think that's a very natural thing for people.
it was abrupt as well. It wasn't like it slowly, like from day 2 on or something like that, I started having better ideas. It was like literally all at one time. I was like, oh shit. So now I know in the future, if I have problems I need to solve, I need to be a little bit more patient and maybe spend some more time disconnecting or, I mean, look, not spend 5 days without my phone on a weekly basis, but you know what I mean? Like, so that was a lesson learned for sure. As far as the rest of it happened after that, I didn't have any specific moments where there was any like huge revelation or anything like that. I did get better in
You
the
didn't have any
technique.
kind of emotional releases or realizations, nothing like that. Nothing.
No, and I tried not to force anything. And I have a very good memory.
Good.
I can certainly go back. I can recall. I mean, I know they've proven time and time again that human memory is very fallible. But I do have a fairly strong memory, and I went back through some of the traumatic experience that I had. I'm like, okay, let me just walk through this mentally, which you're actually not supposed to do in the meditation. You're supposed to, but I'm like, okay, well, I got to kill some time here. So I'm just going to walk through something just to see like, okay, like how do I feel about this today now, 20 years later or whatever it was. But no, to your question though, I didn't have any major, releases, revelations, but I do feel like I was on the path to that. So I think that the 10 days set me up that much closer. To explain that a little bit better is I've been back now for a few days and I've been meditating since I've been back. And
Vipassana specifically, doing the actual technique?
Yep, I'm doing both in one day. I'm
Great.
doing one of Joe Dispenza's, and then I'm doing the Vipassana. So two separate times. And what I found is that I can arrive quickly now. So that 10 days that's still with me. So after I left there, I come back now. I'm not starting over. I'm kind of picking up where I left off, which is really pleasant to know that, hey, this course was awesome. It set me up with the technique and let me become very aware of my body and everything. And I can literally just fall back in like I'm still there. So that's a huge benefit as well.
That's
So
amazing.
so when you leave these things, and hopefully it works the same for everybody else, when you leave these things, you're not like, oh shit, well, I need to start over again. But what I got this week, or that over the 10 days, was I was very in tune with things in my body that, aside from the knee thing, that I thought was just very interesting. Like the constant, continual body scanning and everything else, and just like the very granular things. Like I found that if I
Like
move
what?
my eye, well, if I move my eyes in certain directions, I get different electrical pulses in different parts of my body, and I could do it now, and I still feel it. But I was like, "What the fuck is this?" you know, I'm like, this can't be, you know. So it's just all those little tiny things, and just being aware of all the little subtleties of the body and everything else, and just being able to get calm and really think and reflect. So I got a ton of benefit out of it. I didn't get the full on, full experience specific to any particular past thing or anything like that, but I feel like I'm that much closer to it. So I feel like if I keep going, like that'll eventually arise, which was totally fine with me because I didn't want to put that expectation on myself anyway, or I didn't want to be disappointed when it was over if I didn't have anything like that. So, or I'm
Yeah.
just a sociopath and we can't do anything about it. I don't know,
Well,
but
well, we've already discussed that, but
yeah.
but I think that the whole idea is, and I think that we've discussed it before, that the actual root of the word meditation means to become familiar with, and it seems like you've become a lot more familiar with your body in terms of like just,
Mhm.
oh, this is my brain actually controlling my body. Oh, look, if I do this, this happens. I think that you had like a lot of very big understandings, which is huge. And
Yeah.
so my question for you now is like, and this is to me the difference that kind of makes a difference. Like, how does this affect you moving forward? How did it affect you being able to realize the fact that you were able to leave your cell phone behind and the world didn't collapse? The fact that your
Mm.
clients actually were okay with you being gone. Like, I mean, how does this lead into what happens to you today, tomorrow, a month, a year, a decade from now?
Towards the end, I wasn't getting antsy. I was excited. I was excited to come out of there. I think I could
I
have
love
easily
that.
I could have dreaded getting my phone back. I was prepared to make a scene if there was a bunch of stuff I needed to do. I was going to mess with the team in a lighthearted way, but I was still going to give them a lot of shit. By day 9, I was like, okay, like I'm feeling everything. I have a lot more control, and I'll get to like some of the habits that I've been working on here in a second. But just getting that phone back on the last day, I was excited to get it back. Giving up the phone didn't bother me, and then getting it back wasn't like, oh shit, I don't want to touch this thing. I don't want to get back into it. I was like, I'm ready. Like I felt ready. Like I'm ready to get my phone back
So
now.
So to tie it into the conversations that you and I have had before, specifically on this
Hmm.
podcast, is like, I mean, like you've always been the guy that's always been, oh gosh, it's as they call it,
Hmm.
productivity debt. That you wake up in the morning going, oh gosh, I have to get this done, otherwise I had a terrible day. Like it's I drink so I can finally turn off.
That's
And
right.
for here is the first time that you've actually turned off by choice for 10 days and didn't have the productivity debt. How
Yeah.
does that actually connecting in your mind in such a way that you can actually like start seeing it a different way? Like, I mean, you all of a sudden realize the fact that you're not as irreplaceable as your brain wanted you to believe you were.
Did you tell me this? The cemetery's full of
Yeah, of
irreplaceable people.
irreplaceable people. Yeah, my
Yeah.
father's one of my
Oh, that's
father's
right.
favorite sayings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. God, that should be tattooed on everybody, man. They should do that at birth. So a lot of the positives that came out of that were, now I get up in the morning and I do my day like I want to, like, because what would happen before, and this is like
Amen,
very,
brother.
well, this is pretty. Most people are like this. They'll get up in the morning like, I want to exercise, meditate, any form of self care. And what happens is we wake up and then we're like, look, I see a bunch of messages over there. Okay, I'm just going to tackle this one thing and then I'll get to exercising. And then sure enough, the day gets away from you. Some people are more disciplined than that. So I found that I've been able to really dial that in now. And I'm like, that can wait. Who cares if that waits 30 minutes? It had to wait 10 days before. It's not that big of a deal. And interestingly
So
enough,
to pause
yeah,
you
go ahead.
there for a second, like
Mhm.
it's just like I mean, because you are so good at talking yourself down. For
Sure.
one moment, I want you to give yourself the pat on the back of like, I mean, how big a shift that is from the guy that existed 2 weeks ago. Like
Yeah.
that is a huge thing that you're even willing to entertain that as an idea of the fact of like, you know what, that can wait. You were Mr. Nothing can wait because I'm number 2 on the totem pole. So
Yeah.
I want to compliment you and give you the pat on the back for the sake that is in itself huge, man.
Based on, I think, the last show we did where we were talking about your meditation habits. So I did my meditations this morning. I jogged this morning. I had to try out my new knee, had to test out that new knee to make sure it wasn't just my imagination. But I got all my exercise in. I've now, because I didn't have caffeine for 10 days, I've had caffeine since I've come back. I'm keeping that very limited though in the early morning hours so it doesn't affect my sleep at night. But point being, it's 1 p.m. here. I haven't eaten anything yet. I have tons of energy because I've done all the self-care things in the morning and put off the things that can wait. So that's been a huge shift. And it's only been a couple of days and it's been amazing. One of the other things that I got out of it, just being so in tune with my body, that I thought I don't want to use the word disciplined. A lot of people think, like, guys that have been in the military and all these other things, like, oh, you must be disciplined. I'm like, that was a long time ago, man. That's 25 years ago. If you were a Marine, you must be tough. I'm like, no, 20-year-old me was. I don't like to be dirty now. Like, if it rains, I go grab my raincoat and an umbrella. I don't stand out in it. Like, so it's a perishable skill. We used to say that in law enforcement a lot too. Like, let's say somebody's got a gun, you train it with it every day in law enforcement. Well, if you put that thing down and you don't go to the shooting range for 6 years, you could still probably shoot better than the average citizen, but that's a perishable skill. So discipline and everything else is perishable as well. So the point I'm getting at is that I'm like middle of the road discipline. And I found that, like, I'll break down a lot and I have a sweet tooth. So I'm like, oh, I know I shouldn't eat those Oreos or those cookies or anything like that. But I'm like, I do it anyway. I would always get mad at myself for that, or at least disappointed. I don't say angry, but I'm like, oh, come on, really? You had to eat that garbage? You just had such a good day. You had to do that. With the alcohol, same thing. And I have a different perspective now because I was treating it as like I'm fighting against the actual thing itself. And some of this goes back to the choice thing that we've talked about before about alcoholism and drinking. But there's even another.
This is going.
There's another even angle to it. There's another aspect to it. I was fighting against my want to have like pig out and my want to have beer and everything else, instead of identifying the sensation first. The core of Vipassana is you identify the sensation, not the actual craving, but the sensation of the craving. So since I've been back, it's been so easy where I'm like, it's 7 p.m. I know there's cookies over there in the cabinet. Normally I'd be like, fuck it, I'll get myself a cookie. Now I can quote unquote fight it off, but it's not a fight. It's like, yes, I have the sensation that I want cookies, but I know I'm not going to be happy about it afterwards. But it's no longer like butting heads with myself or whatever. Now it's kind of like, that's just a sensation. That's a craving. It doesn't mean anything. So it took me to it took me to a whole nother level of discipline in that regard. Or I'm like, I don't need that. So that's been very, very helpful.
I definitely want to comment on that a little bit, just in the fact of like for other people. But like, I mean, what you've done is you've taken something that was an enemy and you've actually made it a part of yourself, which is now something that you can deal with. It's let's take it back to the idea of the alcohol for a moment. Like, as long as it was a matter of the drink in the bar is calling me, now all of a sudden you're stuck and you're fighting the drink. As soon as you make it, oh, it's my decision to go have a drink, now you can do something about it. And it seems to me like something's a big switch flicked in your head that all of a sudden you're realizing the fact that this is a sensation inside of me. Yeah. That is huge, man. Like, again, like I want you to keep giving yourself the pats on the back, because these are things that, like, 10 days, wonderful. You did amazingly well. Don't get me wrong. But like these are the revelations that can actually change your life. And I love the fact that these things happen, man. That's amazing.
And again, this is the extreme, like 10-day meditation is extreme, but anybody who can get involved in even just meditating at home can get to that place. And this goes for overeating. This goes for, and there's lots of bad habits out there. Even the phone could be one. But when you identify the root sensation of, what they call in the teachings, there's the cravings and their aversions, and really attack the root of it, I mean, it just changes everything. So again, when people ask me like what I got out of it, obviously it was a nice detox of dopamine, if you want to, that's a smart thing to do. Dopamine detoxes, I'm not sure. But there wasn't much of that. It wasn't depressing whatsoever. I didn't get bored the entire time because there's plenty to think about, plenty to do. I did get off the caffeine, which was nice, which was just like a byproduct of being there. Being more in tune with the pains and just everything in my body, and being able to like address the sensations when they first arise. That was huge. So Now, some people may go to these things and may have a major revelation. Like I know when you went to yours, you had like your moment there. You don't have to expect to go to one of these and have that. You could get a dozen other little things. I feel just great coming out of there. So, and again, we would encourage anybody to do one of these, but even going on a shorter one. So I've been asked a couple of times, would I do it again? I don't necessarily know that I would do this specific one again, not because it wasn't a wonderful program, but because it would be the same one again. Now, there's no harm in reinforcing things, no harm in doing something more than once, but it was a long time. And like I mentioned, I kind of left picking up where I left off with my meditation habits and being able to arrive sooner. So I don't know that I would need to do that length of time for this particular program again. I'm curious about trying other ones. Now, this one is free, though. It's free of charge, so it's accessible to everybody. But yeah, aside from that, coming back out into the world wasn't super weird. I did have a couple experiences. I got dropped off in downtown Chelsea, Michigan from the monastery. One of the guys in the course called himself JJ, but I know his real name's Julian because I heard differently when he was whatever. But so he's awesome. He's an awesome guy. He's from England, so we were just talking like, what the fuck are you doing here? but he dropped me off at a cafe. And I was just so energized just to see people and talk to people. It was a little overwhelming. Like, I'm like looking out the window and everything. I'm like, wow, there's cars going by and everything else. That was a little funny.
But and so the first time that you started talking, was that hard on you? Like, was it just weird, or you just were like, oh my God, I'm so happy I can finally connect with people again?
It was weirder than I thought it was going to be. It was exhausting, physically exhausting to push air out of my voice box, because I talked to my girlfriend. She picked me up. It was an hour and a half drive back here, and we talked all the way back, or I did, and trying to tell her of all the stuff. And I was like, I'm really getting tired. And I'd been walking and everything else. It's not like I was sedentary, but I was like, wow, like if you don't project for a while, and then my throat started to hurt. It hurts a little now. Minor thing, but yeah, the integration coming back out, I was so energized and ready to, see what was going on in the world and come out and see people, that I think some people also get in the mindset like, oh shit, if I do one of these things, I'm just going to become antisocial and like want to run off and whatever. Like, no, I had the exact opposite experience. I was super happy to come back out. Everybody should do this. Like I'm happy still today. We'll see how long it lasts. I may be mad at something by the end of the week, but it's just wonderful.
I also just want to commend you. And so much of this is all really commendation in terms of the fact that just the amount of stuff you've done since I've gotten to know you, and I don't know what you were like before, but you going for this 10-day retreat and you actually making all these changes, you are exactly what we freaking want in human evolution movement as a whole. It's just you are constantly making changes in yourself. And it's just so freaking amazing to see how these things start building upon each other. And you're just not the same guy that I started talking to, 6 months ago? And
True.
It's really 4 months ago. You're making huge changes, man. I'm really, really freaking proud of you.
I have so many things. I had so many things to work through. Some of the things I knew that we needed to work through. Some of the things I had no idea. I'm the average guy out. I'm the average, like I say average, I mean at least as far as Americans go, I've got the same problems everybody else does. Sometimes there's things that you struggle with every day that are in your mind, you're conscious of, and there's some things that you just have no idea. And it's just get out there and just try new things, try hard things. When I was doing my little walking path around the facility, I would just talk to myself a little bit. I'm like, that's right. You're doing this is not easy, but you got to do hard things, try a new thing. It was too late. I was already there. I couldn't leave. But, I was just trying to remind myself, just try new shit and get out there and try new things. And that experience was absolutely wonderful. I can't wait to do the next thing. I don't know what we're going to do next. But
we will discuss when you're in Florida about some GPRR, but that will be something different. Yeah. But it's absolutely. The thing that you said there that I think is just really, really important for people to realize is it's not like you became this guru that's sitting on a mountain, but you're definitely you've started walking down a path. And now the momentum is building. And it's amazing to see how that momentum is building. You're making slightly different choices that lead to slightly different decisions that lead to slightly different outcomes. And then as you keep getting there, it's just I can see how the momentum is progressing for you. And you're still the same guy. You're still the amazing guy, the caring guy, the guy that gets stuff done, all these different things. But as you're doing it, I can also see a level of, and it sounds really rude for me to say in this way, but a level of maturity that is now growing inside of you in terms of the way you're starting to view yourself, in terms of the way you're starting to view your patterns. And you're still the same guy. You're still the average guy. You're just the average guy that now sees things slightly differently, and it becomes easier for you to live in this world as yourself.
Yeah. And a really good point there is we can't change the world, right? So what you do have full control over is your mind and your body. If we can't change the madness out there, look inward, and that's really made all the difference in the world. And I should point out, I'm very skeptical when it comes to all this stuff. I believe, I mean, most people know, like, when I say that I'm an atheist, I just haven't seen enough proof yet. You know what I mean? Like, if there is a God, I would love that. That'd be great. I'd be pleasantly surprised. So I'm not against the idea. I just haven't seen enough proof for myself yet. So I'm like, I hope there is. I really do. So when it comes to like all these other things, even though that Buddhism is not religion, it's not sectarian or sectarian. Is that the right word? I think.
I think it actually is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take it out if it's not the right word. But you know what I mean? They're not affiliated with any religion. So that's the other thing. Anybody of any background or religious experience can go there. It has nothing to do with that. I'm skeptical of all these things. Meditation, probably hypnosis before we started talking, because again, I was one of those naive people that just like he's going to make me quack like a duck or some shit. The lessons that I'm learning are just being open to things. I'm not trying that hard. And everybody should know, like, this isn't a struggle. You don't have to try hard. Just be open to something. Try something once. If you don't like it, don't ever do it again. And all these little incremental changes have been easy and manageable. I do want to just make it clear that 6 months ago, a year ago, I was like, no, that's weird. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. And you don't have to start, at some crazy long thing.
I think that would really be the largest objection. It's like, really, like 10 days of complete silence? Like, aren't you going to go crazy? Is I think the largest objection I heard from people. Like, It's like, why do you have to take everything to like that kind of extreme?
I think that another important part of the course, or another important thing leading up to the course and afterwards, the question I'm getting from friends and family and everything else are, look, I'm interested in this. I'm glad you came out of it. Like, you seem in a better place now. But it seems like it'd be too intensive a thing for me to go through, for one to go through. And it is intense, but it's not uncomfortable. You're not going to lose your mind, for lack of a better explanation. Things happen very, very slowly. There are teachers there that are very knowledgeable. Nobody in my group, at least as far as I knew, nobody got up and ran out screaming. Nobody wanted to leave.
Did everyone stay the whole 10 days?
Everybody stayed the entire 10 days, and everybody seemed to be doing okay. I mean, aside from some of the hygiene habits that were bothering me, everything else seemed to be fine. So it's important. So it's important for people to know that the silence wasn't a problem. It sounds intense, but like anything else, you do one day at a time, and even within those days, you do one block at a time. The instruction is wonderful. The reason it's 10 days is because the original course put on by the instructor is 10 days, and there's a reason behind that. That's why it's not 9 days or it's not 12 days. So the full 10 days is very beneficial. I feel like I needed it because a lot of ideas came in around day 5. After that, I started feeling more in tune with my body. I actually was starting to get a little antsy on day 9, but I needed that. I needed to feel, okay, this is a long stretch of time, but I need to sit with that. I need to face that. I'm like, okay, well, why? Like, what does it matter? Like, so those are things I wanted to go through. I wanted to kind of feel like, am I going to want to stay when this is over? Or am I going to want to like just get out of here? But I went through waves while I was in there. Like, I'm getting a little impatient now. And then I came back down to like, okay, no, but I'm not done yet. I'm not ready to go yet. I need to finish this out. I need to stick through. So I went through all the things that anybody else would do. I got bored sometimes at night. Obviously, I had to deal with all the coughing and everybody being sick. So yeah, all the things and the worries that anybody else would have, I had all those going into it. And none of those things happened. None of those things happened. I didn't have what you had. I didn't have the drowning experience when I was like, but I also don't want people to be afraid of that if they watch your episode 4, I believe. Because what came out of that was amazing release that you got. So
and I will also preface it by saying that like Goenka actually says, like, if you're here, only do Vipassana. And those first 3 days, I didn't know what Vipassana was. So I was convinced it was just going to be 10 days of sitting there watching your breath around your nose. So I was like, by day 3, even by day 2, I was going so crazy. I started doing hypnosis on myself. And I definitely accelerated a process that probably should not have been accelerated. I think if you follow his instructions, you probably will have much more of an experience like Lee did, not necessarily an experience like I did. I'm very happy for the experience I had, but also given the amount of work I did, I was also to some degree prepared to deal with, okay, fine, I'm having a panic attack kind of thing. For many people, that could be a breaking experience. And I'm in no way saying that like I'm more prepared than other people. I'm just saying that given my history, I've done enough stupid things that I've dealt with these things in the past. And
Right.
then
Yeah.
the one other question I've got for you actually is like coming home, like, I mean, was it different for your family? Did they like notice big changes in you? Like your conversation with your girlfriend, your conversation with people around you? Are they sitting there saying like, oh my gosh, you're so different? Or did you find that you were relating to them differently?
I don't I don't know what their expectations were. Everybody was a little apprehensive. They're like, is this guy going to come out and be like a super weirdo now? Um, well, I mean, I've always been kind of strange. So the fact that by the time she picked me up, I'd been sitting at the cafe for an hour and a half and talking to people, and had a brownie because I hadn't had any sugar. I would be apprehensive too if I dropped somebody off for 10 days and picked him up. I'd be like, driving. I'm like in the car, like kind of watching him out of the corner of my eye in case I need to smack him or stop the car. But I feel just because I've had more energy and I've done the day that I've wanted to. So that all obviously affects everybody around me. So I got up, I meditated, I exercised, I did all the things. I've avoided eating junk food at night. That makes me be in a better mood. So I'm kinder to everybody else around me as well. So I think hopefully it's a positive experience for everyone else. When she first walked into the cafe and was looking at me, she kind of had that look like you're picking up somebody who's been in a coma for like I'm are you waiting for me to like scream or something? Honestly, I would have the same reaction. But the positive benefits and the influences that I got, just being more mindful, being more control of my sensations and what's going on in my own body, has translated into me taking better care of myself, and that's translated into me being a better mood, and it's obviously translated into people around me hopefully not being as annoyed with my presence. So that's been a big thing. Before I forget, when I say dopamine detox, I'm not saying that it was a depressing time at all. And like you said, your mind's going to wander a little bit, and I started fantasizing about like all the trips I've got coming up. Because look, with that long of a day, no matter how hard you try to not veer away, like your brain's going to go in different directions. So I got back having not listened to podcasts, music, or anything else, and I went for a walk the first day, I think Sunday. Put music in when I was walking, the same shit I listen to all the time. It's a very eclectic playlist. I was so happy. I was like singing along. I was like, man, this if you don't hear music for a while, I mean, just that alone, being able to get that high of a feeling without narcotics or without drinking, just listening to fucking music I've heard a dozen times, like that was remarkable too. I'm like, holy shit, like you can actually get the same sensations and be excited to hear things like for the first time again. And I was like, man, this is insane. So yeah, so
I love that.
there is the after effect benefit of being away from other things. Every time I meditate now, I'm starting where I left off. So regardless of what happened while I was there for the 10 days, I am that much further ahead. So it was like a real like hard reset and put me in a place now where if I do this again or I continue with this every day, I'm advancing and progressing. Like you don't have to go back and start from day one. And I think that's the most important thing for people to know. And
Yeah.
take clothes, take plenty of clothes. Damn it.
And
Shower.
I will say that maybe in like 30 or 60 days, what we'll do is we'll just have like a little bit of a touch in just to see, like, I mean, how much of it shifted for you, how much of it stayed permanent, how much of it reverted back. I'm really
Yeah.
curious to see about that too. But like,
Yeah.
I'll tell you just from the outside, like, I mean, your energy level is just like, I mean, it seems like it's kind of like off the charts. You just definitely have like a lot more childish happiness about you, which just looks amazing.
I feel it. I really do. I feel it. And we'll know in 60 days just by the shape of my face if I've been able to keep up with the not eating cookies at night. We should get like an AI thing that like measures the circumference of my face before that'll be the gauge. So if I'm still looking like I am now, that means I've been able to fight off all the urges and be mindful and everything else. But yeah, just a great experience. I'll link everything in the notes so people can check it out. What I'll also do is link your episode because it'd be important for people to kind of watch that one and this one. I'm looking forward to doing another one. I may look at other facilities and programs. Some of them are paid, just to try different ones out to see.
Or even Joe
Obviously,
Dispenza, just to see the complete opposite form of meditation. Like, I mean, whereas this is just go into your body and just see what's going on, Joe Dispenza is all about create your new future. I'd be
that's
curious for
true.
you to experience that. It's so different. But I mean, like, you definitely
Yeah,
started down a very interesting path, and I'm excited for you.
yeah,
And I'll say it one more time. I'm really freaking proud of you.
it feels good all the way around, man. And this wouldn't have even come into my life if it hadn't been for you doing it. Because even though we're working together doing all these things, you actually did this. So it could have still just been something like, oh, they have these silent retreats. Neither one of us would have gone. I think now, if I were to go, say, up camping for a while or just kind of get away from distraction, now I have a foundation of like what I need to do to kind of bring up the things I need to bring up and think and get some clarity Obviously, a silent meditation retreat like this, the idea is no distractions. You don't have to make any decisions. Everything's done for you. Your day's very regimented. There's not a lot of scenery on purpose. There's no TVs playing or anything. There's no music playing. Going up into the mountains, obviously, there's a lot to see and do, and you can hike, and there's all these distractions, but you still have that feeling of like, I'm still getting something out of this. I could translate what I learned there and the feelings I got coming out of there into any experience where I'm just away from distraction a little bit. I'm excited to be able to do that. It changed my life, and it will continue to change in everything that I do, from here on out. So it's just a great experience, and hopefully we get more people to do it. I could talk about this thing all day. I hope everybody got something out of this. If anybody has any questions or they're thinking about doing it themselves, believe me, I was a little skeptical. I have a very, very busy life. I have a business with multiple, people to keep track of that are competent, but just because they're competent doesn't mean I always think they are. So I still, like, in my mind, they're still not doing it right. And then, we have multiple projects and things going on. So now I don't have children. Well, I mean, my son's 22, but so there are certain things I don't have that other people have to be responsible for. And some people may want to get away from their kids for 10 days. But I'm just one of those guys that had a lot going on. When the course comes up, the course comes up. So it didn't matter. We could have been in the middle of a huge launch of something for, human evolution movement or something else. It didn't fucking matter. I still had to go. Look, there's no perfect time to do it. Just sign up if you want to and do it, and don't worry about all this external stuff.
I mean, you really hit on all the key points. I think it's just, thank you so much for your openness about everything that happened to you and how it happened, and what shifted, what didn't shift. I think that's all that people want to know about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a super positive experience. All information for the retreat will be linked in the notes. Please leave comments or ask whatever questions you want. I'll answer anything. Some of it I've already forgotten because, like, days 1, 2, and 3, I know I sat and focused on the breath, but I don't remember much else. I'm sure I had thoughts flying around in my head the whole time, but eventually you do run out of things to daydream about. Tim Ferriss does this where he schedules a vacation once every 3 months, so he has something to look forward to, and that's kind of what I caught myself doing. Yeah, he's like I do this dopamine thing where he'll plan a trip to make sure that evenly spaced throughout the year, so he's always got something to look forward to. I'm like, that's brilliant. What was that one guy he talks about? Went on his trip with his family, got to this beautiful place in the islands somewhere, and the first thing he said was,
the next trip,
like, we got to come back here next year. As soon as he walked through the door, because that's how we are as humans. We're just always thinking ahead. Like, instead, like, just enjoy it now, damn it. Like, no. What are we going to do? We got to book this trip for next year. So anyway, please ask any questions you guys want, and to be continued, man.
Thank you so much, Lee.
Hey everyone, it's Lee. Just one more thing before you go. If you've ever wondered if journaling could change your life, you can find out for free by downloading the Emotional Alchemy Journal from the link in the description. Also, if you're looking to connect with people who are just as passionate about growth as you are, check out our Facebook community. It's a great place to discuss what you've heard on the podcast and get access to exclusive content and sessions that are only available there. Just search for Human Evolution Movement on Facebook, or you can find the link in the description. Until next time, keep challenging the chaos within, be a little kinder to yourself, and let's continue to evolve together.